This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
We count on Informed Sources to continue the discussion on important local issues.
It's where our top journalists discuss stories they've covered.
Stay informed with Informed Sources.
Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, ICE was in the news this week, not so much what is served with a cocktail, but with what guards our border. A congressional hearing held at New Orleans City Hall gave a chance for venting not just from politicians, but from the public they serve. Apparently, that public has increased in size as Louisiana population figures show a slight growth. We know what the population numbers are because of data collection. And this week, there was an argument about the physical demands of future data centers. We will also look at Carnival and the increase in smaller walking parades, including this weekend's La Boheme, and the sometimes naughty Krewe du Vieux. And the numbers show that the new passenger train called Mardi Gras is showing larger ridership than expected. Discussing these stories with us are our Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Stephanie Regal, business editor, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, Doug McCash, staff writer, the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, and Chelsea Braisted, writer for Axios New Orleans. And we're going to stick with Chelsea right now because you took a look at it was really a field hearing, a congressional hearing, but a field hearing held here in New Orleans, and it was relative to the immigration and ICE situation. But this had actually been scheduled before the events of this last weekend in Minneapolis, right?
That's right. And we even had the meeting teased to us in December when DHS announced their Operation Catahoula Crunch in December, and we saw some local politicians here saying that they wanted to see more transparency from the federal government. At that time, Congressman Troy Carter said he intended to hold this hearing, and so there we were. Okay,
so it was a field hearing, and who participated in this hearing? Was this a certain committee or members of a certain committee that came down?
That's right. So these were, the meeting was held by 4 Democrats from the Congressional Homeland Security Committee. Okay. No Republicans were in the room. No Republicans were on the dais, I should say. And what they did was really offer an opportunity to say, let's get this on the record. Let's talk about what happened in New Orleans and what were the issues that local advocates and politicians had with how that operation unfolded here.
So what was the discussion like then in terms of how that operation unfolded here, Catahoula Crunch as it was called? What were some of the stories to come out of this hearing?
I think it's fair to say that the federal government was absolutely excoriated during that conversation. From the dais to the people offering evidence, that's local politicians like Mayor Moreno, Councilman J.P. Morrell, and then the advocates as well. So we had someone from the ACLU, a local immigration lawyer. They were talking about not only just the difficulty that they had in getting information from the federal government on who was arrested, where those arrests were taking place, to some more individual stories, particularly from immigration lawyer Homero Lopez, about what it was like for people to have actually been taken into custody.
Mayor Moreno was there also. So what did she have to say to these congressional members about what she would like to see happen here in New Orleans in terms of immigration enforcement?
I think the number one thing that we really heard was transparency and accountability. She mentioned a letter that she sent in December asking for certain pieces of information to come from the federal government, and she said she never received a reply to that letter, and the only information she ever received about this, and she became mayor after this began, but the only information she ever received was what we were reporting in the media.
So in terms of transparency, what do we know about Catahoula Crunch? I mean, how many people were detained? Who were they? Supposedly the focus is on really bad, violent criminals. What's the percentage of that? How effective was it?
Yeah, so the quote that we see a lot, right, is the worst of the worst. That's who they're going after. The federal government was going after in these operations. We know that between somewhere maybe at least between 500, 600 people were actually arrested. Reports have said that the goal was 5,000. We're not totally clear on whether the operation has officially ended. We still can't really get that information from the federal government. Obviously, all eyes have been north of us in the Twin Cities area for the last couple of weeks. Of the 500 or 600, we know that just a percentage of them actually had a violent crime background or criminal background.
So a portion of the agents that had come down here to New Orleans as part of Catahoula Crunch were redirected up to Minneapolis. So did that sort of shorten the effort here? Do we know?
We don't know.
We don't know.
I've asked. I have not gotten that information. And we do know, of course, that ICE and Border Patrol maintain presences here in New Orleans year-round. We're a border city. New Orleans is right there on the edge of the country. So, it's not uncommon for me to be on a dog walk and see a Border Patrol car. But whether or not this specific operation is over, we do not know.
Okay. When you say there's how many people have been arrested, several hundred or?
Around 560-ish is what we've seen reported.
Could there possibly be a way to have due process with that many people? I mean, just kind of going through the door. I mean, what happens to these people once they're arrested?
That is also a great question and something we'd love to get more information on. When I say we, I know members of the media have asked plenty of questions around what's actually happening with folks. And DHS points us to their website that has, I think it's like.
So we don't know if there's due process, and when the media asks questions, you don't get answers.
That's correct.
So yes, there's certainly a lot of question marks, and of course, on everybody's mind, even more so because of the events, in Minneapolis this past weekend. We do know that people who have been arrested here or detained here are in detention centers. We don't know how many, or exactly where they are, but there have been people who've been placed in detention centers, and I'm going to go over to you, Stephanie, because that maybe has an impact on our population numbers?
Well, perhaps. And so earlier this week, the U.S. Census Bureau released its annual population estimates for the 50 states. These come out every year in between the 10 years that the full census comes out. It's based on publicly available records, birth records, death records, IRS filings and such. But what the numbers show is that Louisiana's population through the first half of 2025, so July 2024 to July 2025, nudged up just slightly by about 3,300 people. So we're still in the 4.6 million something range. That is not as bad as it had been the previous 2 years. We had actually lost population, but we're still 43rd out of the 50 states in terms of our population growth. And the problem is that we're not growing as fast as other states, and we're continuing to really lose more people than we're bringing in, even though our numbers in real terms are growing, because births are outpacing deaths. So to the point that you mentioned earlier, we had something like 14,900 new people in the state, international immigrants. That offset the loss of 14,300 something that moved out. And it's interesting as we talk about international migrants, coming in, that those people really pushed us, into the positive territory. However, demographer Allison Plyer at the New Orleans Data Center, which studies all of these numbers, said that it's possible that those weren't people that moved here willingly, but were deportees sent to our detention centers. Louisiana has a disproportionately high number of these detention centers, these for-profit prisons around the state that are holding people. And so it's not clear yet if that's the case, but Allison suggested that it could be. So that would be very troubling if, in fact, the only reason that we grew was because we had international migrants that we were detaining in our prisons.
So what then is the state trying to do? I mean, this has been an ongoing problem.
This has been an ongoing thing. I mean, the problem of negative net migration, the problem of lagging other southern states. I mean, there was one really interesting statistic that I saw that showed that over 5 years, Louisiana was the only state that experienced a negative net migration of like 53,000 people. Every other southern state had positive population growth. You know, even Mississippi, which usually keeps us off the bottom, or we battle with Mississippi for last place, and they beat us out in terms of that. And it's really because of jobs, you know, and economic opportunity. Over the past 20 years, job growth in Louisiana has been less than 3%, 2-something%. Nationwide, it's 20%. So there's just not the opportunities, even though, and, you know, Governor Jeff Landry's administration has really been very aggressive about courting new industry, less concerned about the environmental impacts, but bringing big projects, LNG projects, you know, manufacturing plants, data centers that really have sexy, big billion dollar price tags attached, but those don't necessarily create permanent, sustainable, good-paying jobs. They create a lot of temporary construction jobs, but not the kind of permanent jobs that will keep people here. And we talked to LED Secretary, Louisiana Economic Development Secretary Susan Bourgeois about it. She was at Washington Mardi Gras, but she acknowledged that, yes, this is something we're continuing to work on. Her framing of the data was that, well, we've stopped the bleeding and we've stabilized, and now we're going to try to, you know, build on that to create more sustainable, long-term, well-paying jobs that will make it easier for people to live here. But I mean, you know, like, we've only been talking about this for my entire career. I worked for Errol at Gambit, and this was an issue in the 80s, and it's just gotten worse.
And it's gotten worse. Like you said, economic opportunities become number one. People have to have good jobs to support their families. But what about environmental issues, too? You know, being in, you know, the path of hurricanes, et cetera, that type of thing. Is that keeping people from staying here or wanting to come here?
Well, you know, I don't know, because we didn't get into that. It's going to be interesting to see. The Census Bureau releases data in March that is going to break this down more by parish, and then in June, where we're going to get the municipal numbers. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see which areas are growing, you know, and which ones are really losing. I mean, what I can say is that the industries that are here in spite of, you know, the climate vulnerabilities and because of the natural resources or the proximity to the river and the Gulf. So, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword, but there's plenty of industry that is spending a lot of money coming to this state. But again, a lot of those, you know, projects do not create long-term sustainable jobs. And you look at a place like Cameron Parish over there next to Lake Charles, it's like basically fallen off the map. I mean, there's nothing there but wetlands and industry. Nobody lives there anymore. I mean, there's hardly like a school district. There's not really a municipal government. All the people had to move north. There's nothing there.
North or out altogether. Well, I guess, you know, positive numbers are better than the negative ones.
It is, and we were 43rd, so that means that there are 7 states that didn't do as well as us.
Okay, well, that's a way of looking at it.
It is.
Thanks a lot, Steph. Okay, over to you, E, because they're talking about these data centers and the jobs they're going to create or whatever. You wanted to reflect on that.
First of all, Cameron Parish used to be the home of the Hackberry Ramblers. Yeah. These old guys are really great with the fiddle and all that. Now they're no more either, but that's, I guess that's an example of the problem. I'm not even sure if Hackberry still exists.
I don't know.
But for this. But, you know, what Stephanie is saying, I mean, this just pinpoints the problem, is that on the one hand, there's jobs, or the need for jobs, people looking for jobs, and then there's the resistance to things that could create jobs. And the data centers is a good example. There's a big project in North Louisiana, which may Stephanie tell us about, but we had an example in the city this week, a proposal to build a data center in eastern New Orleans, right off of Reed Road. And maybe a year or two ago, people had been saying, hey, a data center, this is good. I mean, this is a lot of activity, but people are starting to think differently about it. And the council had several meetings. Mayor Moreno came out strongly against it from the beginning. The Sierra Club is against it. And the objection seems to be, one is energy, that they use a lot of energy, and the other is that they use a lot of water for cooling systems, that sort of thing. And then the people who live in neighborhoods say, you know, you got trucks, you got lights all night and all of that, you know. We prefer to have a residential area. So finally what the council resolved was to delayed this for a year because part of the problem is that they're being asked to vote on something that's really no law right now. Okay, I mean, there's really no proposal dealing with data centers, and so they need to go and come up with a data center law. Now the Sierra Club says, well, why do you need a law? Just say no. Okay, that's the example. And so anyway, it's delayed. But I wanted to ask Stephanie about her experience going up into what Richland Parish, where the big Meta development is going on, which is like a data center many times bigger.
A data center many times bigger, and I think it's going to even get bigger. But I mean, this thing is millions and millions of square feet, 2,500 acres, that's going to house these massive AI, computers. And there are very legitimate concerns about the impact on the quality of life and the impact on the utility, down the line, and the potential water usage. Right. I mean, Meta has said that they are not going to, take more water than the parish, aquifers can sustain. But evidence on what's happened in other places have called some of this into question. The difference, I would say, is that, and let me tell you something, it's really interesting and fascinating to see this thing going up. It's also a little bit heartbreaking to see this rural area completely falling, going by the wayside, but it is a very sparsely populated area and very, very poor. I mean, there's really nobody up there, well, not literally, but literally just not that many people around this thing. There's nothing there but farmland. And so to put this massive facility there is quite different than plopping it down in the middle of New Orleans. And North Louisiana doesn't have the climate vulnerabilities. I mean, Susan Bourgeois of LED fame told me early last fall, before they'd announced the Meta deal, but they were in negotiations at the time, that Louisiana had opportunity in the AI data center space. And I was like, no, you're kidding. And she said, no, we really do. And I said, certainly not down here, thinking of floodplains and hurricanes. And she said, certainly not down here. She said, not below I-10, but up in North Louisiana. So honestly, the thought of a data center in New Orleans East strikes me as absurd as it does some of the people who live out there. I get your larger point about how, if we want to create jobs, we have to create jobs. But even in North Louisiana, where they are going to maybe hire as many as 5,000 people to build this thing, permanent staffing, these are like maintenance jobs. It's like being a maintenance guy in a in a warehouse that keeps track of computers and HVAC equipment. 500 jobs. That's better than nothing up there, but this is not a windfall.
Particularly for such a massive facility. All right, well, we'll see what goes on with that. All right, thanks a lot, E, and thank you to Stephanie, and over to you, Doug, because let's talk about something fun. Yeah, big weekend for the walking parades, and we got some.
It is. We have to bundle up and get out and see 3 of our wonderful downtown do-it-yourself marching parades. And one of the things that interests me about this is that it is not new. You can find an article in the old Bee newspaper from the 1830s that discusses something that sounds very familiar. A walking parade made up of costumers who dressed as animals and people from foreign lands, popular entertainers, and politicians and politics. And it's exactly the same now. Yeah. I think the modern walking parades started probably in the 1980s. Krewe du Vieux, which is on Saturday night, started in 1987, but it descended from something earlier, the Krewe of Clones.
Right. From the
parade.
Contemporary Arts Center, right?
All artists, artists are to blame for all of this, essentially. But after Katrina, there was this rise of do-it-yourself parades downtown, and they all have a very signature personality, each one. They go from a parade that celebrates the 100 Years' War in France, right? The Joan of Arc parade, to Chewbacca's, which has to do with popular science fiction, to Boheme, which celebrates the use of absinthe, the old reputedly hallucinogenic liquor. So they each have a very distinct character. Tonight is Boheme, which is wonderful. It's a dreamy sort of eclectic parade. You never know what the next little marching group is going to be. This year we're going to have a brand new one which is devoted to Britney Spears. I think we can all get behind that. There's going to be a bicycle crew that intends to give away actual bicycles as throws. They're going to give them to children.
And this is all for Boheme, in Boheme?
This is all in Boheme, and then you'll also see some regulars like the Marie Antoinettes who dress up fabulously like Marie Antoinette, of course.
So much creativity.
So much creativity in each of these, each quite distinct. So Boheme is tonight. So your dreaminess is tonight. Tomorrow night is Krewe du Vieux.
And the theme is?
And the theme is, earlier you said that they are sometimes naughty. I think they're reliably naughty. I think they are, the theme this year is Save the Wet Glands, and that would be about as far as we can go into their theme without...
Very much so.
They get away with murder every year.
And this is not a child's parade. No.
Unless you want to explain a lot of things.
Right, you have to explain a whole lot.
Afterwards, probably not. And then on Sunday, it's followed by a very charming parade, T-Rex, which is the adult version of the old school parade where you made floats out of shoeboxes, right?
Yeah, shoebox floats.
And it is this toy parade that goes through the streets. You have to get up close and get down low to see them. But when you do, they are as biting as coup d'etat. They are political and fierce. I call them the Chihuahua of Mardi Gras parades.
Creativity and a lot of wit too. Absolutely, wit and satire. And so these are walking parades. Are there any? Well, we know in T-Rex there are floats, little floats.
They're little floats.
But the others, are there any
floats? Krewe du Vieux has floats. They are mule-drawn floats, small, and they make it through the French Quarter. So it is the float parade in the French Quarter. I think it's the only one. And then 2 weeks before Mardi Gras is when the official city's Mardi Gras season starts, and that's when the float parades begin uptown. So this is sort of the carnival before carnival. And if you've never gone, speaking to your viewers, if you've never gone, go. It's marvelous. It's different. It's less predictable, quirkier than what you'll find uptown. Of course, you're not going to catch a lot of beads.
But you're going to definitely have a lot of laughs.
You'll have a lot of laughs.
Definitely will. And have a nice time, of course. You're going to be kind of chilly this weekend, so bundle up. Definitely big time bundle up. But a big weekend for Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras is just getting going now, and we're going to continue to talk about Mardi Gras, but a different sort with E right now.
Yeah, first I want to acknowledge that Doug is a specialist in the offbeat Mardi Gras, which is really an important part of the story.
Has been for the last since Katrina, the last 20 years.
Yeah, since August we've had this train called the Mardi Gras service running between Mobile and New Orleans. And from the beginning, the numbers have looked good. It started in August, and they said in the first month they had like 18,000 riders going back and forth, and they were expanding the number of coaches during the carnival season. They're expanding during the end of the football season, and so things were good. And the president of Amtrak says, "Look, our formula is to be on time, have comfortable coaches, and make it a good experience." And of course, the big thing about the train is when you get to where you're going, you're downtown. When you get off, you're downtown. You're not at some distant airport. I mean, you're right there. And that's could probably be something that's could really encourage restaurants and bars and all these little towns, all the Gulfport and Biloxi and Pascagoula, and so I think it's going to encourage more of that. But the other bit of good news is that New Orleans, for a long time, has had 3 other long-distance trains: the Sunset Limited, the city in the city of New Orleans, and the Crescent. The Amtrak has reported an increase in the Sunset Limited, which goes from New Orleans to Los Angeles, 18.9%. I've been on that train. It's a great train, especially when it crosses the Huey P. Long Bridge. It's like being in a 747 and taking over. And so Railroading is always, passenger railroading has always kind of had a minor role in New Orleans, but it's improving. I mean, there's some good things that are happening. And then it seems to be real encouragement about what's going on between Mobile and New Orleans and the towns along the way.
Yeah, that really is good news. I know people who have taken the train and they've really enjoyed the ride.
Yeah.
And so, good way to get to enjoy Mardi Gras. If you want to go over to Mobile and enjoy theirs, you can go over there and do that too now, huh?
Well, to some New Orleans, that's the fighting word. Skip Mobile. Get off the Pascagoula. You know,
I know people from Mobile who would not agree.
Yeah,
anyway, okay, all right, round table. E, over to you.
Speaking of Mardi Gras, there's an increased effort. For the last 4 years, has been an effort in terms of really cleaning up and picking up after the parades, especially bottles and cans. And that's increased. There's a big thing. There's certain parades that can have actually marching groups behind the parades picking up the bottles and cans. And so the cleanup effort is really growing.
Good. That is good news. Stephanie.
Sticking with the category of interpreting data, we'll have our annual look at New Orleans housing prices in 2025 coming out Sunday.
All righty. Doug, over to you.
Something to watch. The Krewe du Vieux is the first of the float parades that'll begin next weekend. And watch Auchan because they have, for the first time, have children riders in the parade. They're all on one float. And this is something different in New Orleans Carnival.
You know, I wanted to ask you, in the walking parades, there's music in it too, right? Bands and some of the dancing groups.
There certainly are. And,
not just people walking down the street.
No,
there's a whole lot more to see.
Krewe du Vieux, for instance, prides itself between each float is a marching band.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Chelsea, over to you.
Yeah, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the election we've got next Saturday, February 7th. We're going to be replacing some folks who ended up taking new jobs in city council.
That's right. So back to the polling places, cast your vote. And that's for a couple of House seats, right? Or just one House?
2 House and 1 state Senate.
Okay. All right, in Orleans Parish.
Yep.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for being here, and thank you all for joining us. Bundle up this weekend, and we'll see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
We count on Informed Sources to continue the discussion on important local issues.
It's where our top journalists discuss stories they've covered.
Stay informed with Informed Sources.
Support for this program comes from the Gail and Tom Benson Charitable Foundation, committed to funding educational causes.
This program is brought to you in part by the Eugenie and Joseph Jones Family Foundation, a local foundation proud to support education, the arts, and culture in the greater New Orleans area.